My name is Sarah Chen, whose name has been changed. My job is being a night shift nurse at Detroit City Hospital, Michigan. This is a large hospital with a rather long history. Although there are newly built areas, there are still old hallways with the familiar smell of disinfectant and dim fluorescent lights. Especially, the night shift here has a very distinct atmosphere. Quieter, but also more tense, as life and death seem more apparent in the darkness. I have been working here for about a year. I am quite familiar with the wards, the patient rooms, and even the hidden corridors. However, there is one thing that always makes me curious. It is a room. The room is located at the end of the old hallway on the 3rd floor. An area less used at night. The room door is always closed and locked, with a small sign that says, "Authorized personnel only," and a large padlock. The door looks old, the paint faded, as if it has been locked for a very long time. The room number is 3B. Every time I pass by that room at night, I feel a sudden cold draft radiating from it. That cold is very different from the normal temperature in the hospital. It is a deep, chilling cold, as if coming from inside. I asked a few colleagues about room 3B, but they all avoided answering or just vaguely said it was an old room not in use anymore. Their attitude made me even more curious. It seemed there was a secret behind this locked door. One night, during my break, I decided to ask the night security guard, Mr. Thompson, whose name has been changed. Mr. Thompson is an older man who has been working at this hospital for a very long time. He knows a lot of stories about the hospital, both official ones and rumors. I sat down next to Mr. Thompson in the small security room near the entrance. Mr. Thompson, I said, can you tell me about room 3B on the 3rd floor? The room that's always locked. Mr. Thompson looked at me, his face suddenly becoming serious. He stopped what he was doing, looking out at the dark hallway. That room, Mr. Thompson said softly. Why are you curious about that room? I just see that it's always locked and has a very strange atmosphere. I said. Mr. Thompson was silent for a moment. He sighed, a heavy sigh. All right, Mr. Thompson said, turning back to look at me. Do you want to hear the truth about that room? The truth that not everyone dares to believe. I nodded, although I felt a little uneasy inside. The secret behind the locked door was about to be revealed. Room number 3B wasn't just a forgotten room. It was a place hiding a horrifying story. And I was about to hear that story. Mr. Thompson looked at me for a moment, then began to tell the story of room 3B. His voice deep and full of reflection. That room 3B, you know, it wasn't always empty, Mr. Thompson said. Back in the day, it was one of the emergency rooms. A trauma room, where they brought in accident victims. People with serious injuries. He paused, as if remembering. Many years ago, Mr. Thompson continued, around the 1980s, there was a crime in the area near the hospital. A young man was attacked, robbed, and stabbed many times. It was a very brutal crime. My heart beat faster. A murder? That young man was brought into the hospital in very critical condition. Mr. Thompson said, his voice softer. Straight into this room 3B. The doctors and nurses did everything they could to save him, fighting death moment by moment. He shook his head, but it wasn't enough. Dear, the injuries were too severe. That young man passed away right on the operating table. In that room 3B. Hearing this, I felt a shiver. Room 3B was where someone had died tragically and violently. What was his name? I asked softly. His name was David, whose name has been changed. Mr. Thompson said. A young man. with his whole future ahead of him. Lost his life so unfairly just for a little property. Mr. Thompson was silent for a long time, staring into space. After David's death, Mr. Thompson continued, his voice slightly trembling. Everything in this hospital started to change. How did it change, sir? I asked, a sense of unease rising. Strange things started happening, Mr. Thompson said, especially near room 3B. Late at night, when everything was quiet, people would hear strange noises from inside. Sounds of breaking, groaning. He stared at me intently, his eyes serious. At first, everyone thought it was just the old building, or the wind, Mr. Thompson said, but then, things became much more terrifying. The story from the security guard had begun to reveal the horrifying truth behind the locked room. The pain of the young man David, who died tragically in room 3B, seemed to have left behind a negative energy, a resentment, and that energy had started disturbing the hospital. I sat there, listening to Mr. Thompson tell the story, feeling shivers running through my body. Room number 3B wasn't just where someone had died. It was where the spirit of someone who had died in pain and anger still lingered. Mr. Thompson continued to tell the story, his voice deep and serious. He said that the noises and strange phenomena near room 3B were just the beginning. After the death of the young man David, a negative energy seemed to spread throughout the hospital. You know, Mr. Thompson said, looking straight into my eyes. Some nights, people hear screaming. The screaming of a man, from inside room 3B. My heart pounded. David screaming? That screaming. It sounds very painful, very horrifying, Mr. Thompson said, his voice slightly trembling, as if he's still reliving the last moments of his life. When he was attacked, he said it wasn't just the screaming. Sometimes, people also heard sounds like struggling, fighting, from inside that empty room. Even more terrifying things started happening in the hospital. Sometime after David's incident, Mr. Thompson said, his face full of worry. There was a nurse. She worked in another ward. Suddenly got possessed by something. I shivered. Possessed? She changed completely, Mr. Thompson said, her eyes empty, cold. She went into an elderly patient's room. And she harmed that patient. Very brutally. Mr. Thompson didn't go into detail, but his face and trembling voice were enough for me to understand the horror of the incident. After that incident, the nurse was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, Mr. Thompson said, but many people here believe that it wasn't mental illness. It was because David's spirit was causing trouble, or some evil thing had clung to him. The curse from the locked room seemed to have affected others as well. Mr. Thompson continued to tell other strange stories. Then, in the maternity ward, Mr. Thompson said softly, there was a woman, after giving birth, suddenly lost a lot of blood. The doctors and nurses tried to save her, but couldn't stop the bleeding. She died right there on the delivery table. People say that it wasn't a normal complication. Another mysterious death? And the respiratory cases. Severe tuberculosis patients, Mr. Thompson said. Some patients who were stable suddenly stopped breathing, with no clear reason. As if someone had stolen their breath. All those stories happened after David's death. And they all had something unusual, unexplainable about them. Mr. Thompson looked at the locked room 3B, his eyes full of fear. They say that David's spirit is very angry, Mr. Thompson said, dying so unjustly, in great pain. He can't find peace. He's trapped here, and he doesn't want to be alone here. He said that patients staying in rooms near room 3B often heard screaming at night. That screaming scared them, and some people requested to be moved. The ghost in this hospital was real, and it was very dangerous. The curse from the locked room had brought tragedies to the hospital. And I, a night shift nurse, was sitting there listening to the story, hearing Mr. Thompson tell the horrifying stories about what had happened in the hospital after the death of the young man David. Especially the tragedies related to room 3B. Sent shivers down my spine. David's tragic death, the possessed nurse incident, the death in the maternity ward, and the sudden deaths of patients, all painted a grim picture of a heavily haunted place. After the night I talked to Mr. Thompson, I couldn't forget what I had heard. The image of the young man dying so unfairly, the painful screams, and the angry ghost, haunted me constantly. Every time I passed by the locked room 3B at night, I felt a bone-chilling cold draft radiating from inside, much stronger than before. That feeling wasn't just cold, it was a heaviness, a gloom, as if someone was right on the other side of the door, staring at me. I started having horrifying dreams. In my dreams, I saw myself in room 3B. The room was dark, cold. I saw the figure of a young man lying on the operating table, covered in blood. I heard screaming, groaning, sounds of struggling. Then, I saw a blurry black shadow appear, engulfing the young man. I woke up in a panic, my heart pounding, covered in cold sweat. I tried to tell myself it was just a dream caused by hearing Mr. Thompson's scary story. But those dreams were too real, too vivid. My colleagues also noticed that I looked tired and worried. They asked me what was wrong, but I didn't dare tell them about what I had heard and seen. I was afraid they would think I was crazy. The night shift at the hospital became much more difficult for me. Every strange noise, every shadow flitting at the edge of my vision made me jump. I always felt as if someone was watching me in the empty hallways. One night, as I was patrolling on the 3rd floor, I passed by the locked room 3B. As usual, I felt the bone-chilling cold draft radiating from inside. I stopped in front of the door, looking at the large padlock. And then, I heard a sound from inside the locked room. A faint sound at first, like a light scratching on the floor. Then, the sound became clearer, the sound of objects being moved, chairs being dragged, and mixed in with that, was groaning. Faint groaning, full of pain and anger. My heart pounded. I knew it wasn't my imagination. There was something inside the locked room. Then, I heard that sound, the screaming of a man. The screaming sounded very sudden, very intense, and full of horrifying pain. It was like the screaming of someone enduring extreme torment. That screaming echoed from inside room 3B, piercing through the old wooden door, reverberating in the empty hallway. It sounded exactly like the screaming Mr. Thompson had described. I froze in terror. My whole body trembled. I knew that was David screaming. The spirit of the murdered young man was still in that room. Screams in the night. My horrifying dreams were real. The ghost in this hospital was still in pain and angry. And I had witnessed, and heard, it firsthand. The horrifying screaming from inside the locked room 3B confirmed that what Mr. Thompson had told me was true. The ghost of the young man David, who died tragically, was still trapped there, full of pain and anger. After that night, I didn't dare to walk past room 3B alone anymore. Every time I walked past, I felt an intense fear, as if something evil was inside, trying to get out. The stories Mr. Thompson told about the horrors that happened in the hospital after David's death only increased my fear. the possessed nurse incident, the mysterious death in the maternity ward, the sudden deaths of respiratory patients, all seemed to be connected to the negative energy from room 3B. I started observing what happened in the hospital more closely. Every time I heard about a patient who died suddenly, I felt a shiver and wondered if it was related to the ghost in the locked room. Some nights, when I was working in other wards, I still heard strange noises from a distance, faint groaning, or the sound of objects being moved. Those sounds seemed to spread throughout the hospital, especially at night. My colleagues who had been working here for a long time also seemed to know about these things. But they didn't talk about it. They just kept silent, and they also seemed scared. There was an older nurse. She had been working here for many years. One time, I saw her standing in front of room 3B, arms crossed, her face full of worry and sadness. I approached her and asked softly, "Nurse, do you know anything about this room?" She looked at me, her eyes full of weariness. "This room carries a lot of bad things," she said softly. "Many tragedies have happened related to it." She didn't say anything else, just shook her head and walked away. Mysterious deaths continued, although they didn't happen all the time. Occasionally, there would be cases of patients dying suddenly without clear reason, especially elderly patients or those with serious illnesses. Perhaps David's ghost wasn't just trapped there. Perhaps he was very angry and wanted revenge, or simply wanted to cause suffering to the living. The ghost was spreading tragedy in the hospital. His presence seemed to affect everything around him. I lived in constant fear every time I worked the night shift. This hospital was no longer a safe workplace for me. It was a haunted place. A place where death and suffering still lingered. And the locked room 3B, at the end of the third-floor hallway, was the center of that haunting. I knew I was working in a dangerous place. And the ghost of the murdered young man was still there, spreading tragedy. My life as a night shift nurse at Detroit City Hospital has become a constant struggle with fear and haunting. The story of the young man David who was murdered in room 3B and the tragedies that followed are always on my mind. I still continue to work there, because I need the job. But every night, I live in anxiety and vigilance. I always feel as if someone is watching me in the empty hallways. The locked room 3B has become a constant reminder of the terrifying truth. Every time I walk past, I feel the bone-chilling cold draft and a sense of oppression. I don't hear the screaming as clearly as that night anymore. But sometimes, I still hear faint groaning, or strange noises from inside. Stories about mysterious deaths continue to spread in the hospital. Although not publicly acknowledged, nurses and doctors who have been working here for a long time know that something is wrong here. The ghost in the old hallway is not limited to room 3B. It seems, the negative energy from there has spread out, affecting the entire third floor, and even other areas of the hospital. Some nights, when I'm in another ward, I suddenly feel a cold draft engulf me, and the feeling that someone is standing right behind me. When I turn around, no one is there. I know that is the presence of the ghost, or the energy from him. I have tried searching online for ghost stories at Detroit City Hospital, or other old hospitals in Michigan. I found some notable stories about paranormal phenomena reported at old hospitals. Places related to death and suffering. Some stories tell of ghosts of patients or medical staff who have passed away, wandering the hallways. But none of the stories exactly match our case, about an angry spirit trapped in a specific room after a murder. However, those stories further solidify my belief that what I am experiencing is real. The terrifying truth about room number 3B is this: It is not just a locked room. It is a grave of anger and suffering. The ghost of the murdered young man is still there. And he is still spreading fear and tragedy. I don't know if his spirit will ever find peace. I only know that I have to continue working in this hospital. Living with fear and haunting. Every night, when I walk past the locked room 3B, I feel as if an invisible gaze is staring at me from inside. The ghost in the old hallway is a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the existence of supernatural things that we cannot understand. And I am the witness to this terrifying truth. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, or stories based on accounts and unexplained mysteries, like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.